Teen wrongfully arrested while driving with grandmother, but what police discovers. The sound of sirens grew louder. Flashing red and blue lights lit up the rearview mirror. A teenager's hands trembled on the steering wheel, his breath quick and shallow. "Just stay calm," he whispered to himself. Beside him, his grandmother looked confused and afraid. They had no idea what was going on. This was supposed to be a happy day, a drive, a small trip together. Something to celebrate a new chapter in his life. But in a matter of seconds, everything had changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. It all started that morning, in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The sun peeked through the window blinds, casting a soft glow across Jason's room. The alarm hadn't even gone off yet, but he was already awake. Today was special. Jason stretched and sat up, rubbing his eyes. A smile spread across his face as he remembered. He was taking his grandma on a drive today, just the two of them. He had passed his learner's permit test a few weeks ago, and today was the first real outing. He couldn't wait. He looked over at the photo on his nightstand. It was a picture of him and his grandmother, both smiling wide at his last birthday. She wasn't his blood grandmother, but she had raised his dad since he was a kid and had become the heart of their family. To Jason, she was just Grandma, the woman who made the best cookies, told the funniest stories, and never missed a chance to cheer him on. He got dressed quickly and headed downstairs. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the house. His mom was flipping pancakes while his dad, "Read the paper." Grandma was already at the table, her silver hair neatly tied back, eyes twinkling. "Morning, sleepyhead," his mom teased. "Morning," Jason said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. Then he turned to his grandma. "Ready for our big adventure?" Grandma smiled. "More than ready, but first, sit and eat. We've got a big day ahead." Jason sat down as his dad looked up. "Now remember what we talked about," he said, a little more serious. "Driving is a big responsibility, especially with precious cargo." "I know, Dad," Jason nodded. "I'll be extra careful." They ate together, laughing and chatting. It was the kind of morning that felt almost too perfect. Jason felt proud. Growing up in a small, close-knit community, everyone knew everyone. But today, he wasn't just another kid in Maplewood. Today, he was a driver. After breakfast, Jason and his grandma headed out. His mom called out from the porch, "Drive safe, and don't let Grandma talk you into drag racing." Everyone laughed. Jason got into the driver's seat, adjusting the mirrors like his dad had shown him. Grandma settled in beside him. He turned the key, the engine hummed to life, and they pulled out of the driveway. His first real drive. He felt on top of the world. They passed by the park where he used to ride his bike, the library where he did his school projects, and the community center where he taught seniors how to use smartphones. Every turn felt familiar, but this time, he was the one behind the wheel. "You're doing great," Grandma said, patting his hand. "Your granddad would have been proud." Jason smiled. "I wish I had met him." "Oh, he would have loved you. Always said family isn't about blood, it's about love." They talked easily as they drove toward the next town. Jason shared his college dreams. Grandma told him about her book club drama. They teased each other about what gifts might be, hiding in her shopping list. He didn't even realize how far they'd gone. Driving felt natural. It was a clear day, the roads open, music playing low on the radio. They were only 10 minutes from their destination when it happened. A police car pulled up behind them. At first, Jason thought it would pass, but then the sirens turned on. He looked in the mirror. His heart began to pound. "What's going on?" Grandma asked, her voice calm but puzzled. I don't know," Jason replied, his voice unsteady. "I wasn't speeding." He turned on the signal and pulled over slowly, just like he had been taught. "It's okay," Grandma said gently. "Probably just a misunderstanding." but Jason's hands were already sweating. His chest felt tight. The police car didn't pass. It stopped right behind them. An officer got out quickly, hand resting near his belt. Jason could barely breathe. He hadn't done anything wrong, so why did this feel so wrong? Jason's heart was still racing, even after the police cruiser sped past without stopping. He exhaled slowly, trying to calm the flutter in his chest. "See?" Grandma said gently, her hand resting on his arm. "Nothing to worry about. Probably had somewhere else to be." Jason nodded but didn't say much. The flashing lights had left him shaken, even if just for a moment. Still, he smiled at her, not wanting to ruin their day. "Let's keep going," he said, pulling the car back into the lane. "We've got shopping to do." Grandma smiled back. "That's more like it." The drive continued, smoother now, the road ahead stretching under a cloudless sky. Trees lined the edge of the highway, their green leaves fluttering like little flags in the wind. Jason kept both hands steady on the wheel, occasionally sneaking glances at his grandma, who sat beside him looking out the window, content and relaxed. "This is nice," she said after a while. "Just us." "Yeah," Jason agreed. "Feels kind of like a little road trip." "You know," she said, "when your dad was your age, he was terrified to drive me anywhere. Said I was a backseat driver." Jason chuckled. "Was he wrong?" Grandma raised her eyebrows. "I'll let you decide by the end of today." They laughed together, the kind of laugh that leaves your chest feeling lighter. Jason felt something inside him settle. Maybe this was what growing up felt like, steering the car, hearing stories that weren't from books or movies, but from someone who lived them. They passed farms, quiet fields, old barns painted with faded advertisements. Grandma pointed things out here and there. "That used to be a bakery," she said, nodding toward a boarded-up building. "Had the best peach pie you ever tasted." Jason listened closely, even if he couldn't picture the pie. It wasn't just about the dessert. It was about her memories, her world. And he loved being let in. "I didn't know you ever lived out this way," he said. "Oh, sure," she replied. "Before your dad came along. Worked at a little diner just outside Millbrook. Waitressed mornings, studied nights. Life was simple then, hard but simple." Jason glanced over. "You miss it?" "I miss the quiet," she said softly. "But I wouldn't trade what I have now for anything." The car ride continued, filled with soft conversation. Jason asked her about her favorite books, and she told him about the time she met an author by accident in a bookstore. They talked about school, family, music, and all the little pieces that make a person's life feel full. Grandma asked, "Do you think you'll still visit me after you go off to college?" "Of course," Jason said immediately. "You're not getting rid of me that easy." "I'll hold you to that," she said, smiling. They passed a small gas station, and Jason signaled to pull in. "Want to grab a drink or snack?" he asked. "I'm buying." "You're buying?" Grandma teased. "Well, in that case, I'll take a lemonade and a bag of those spicy chips I shouldn't have." Jason parked carefully, checked the mirrors like he always did, then turned off the engine. The hum of the car died, leaving only the sound of birds chirping and tires crunching gravel. Inside the store, Jason grabbed 2 drinks and some snacks. As he walked to the counter, a man ahead of him turned and gave him a long look. Jason didn't say anything, but he felt it, an invisible weight, a stare that made his skin prickle. He quickly paid and returned to the car. "Everything all right?" Grandma asked as he got in. "Yeah," Jason said, brushing it off. "Just people being people." They shared the chips as they drove, Grandma making a face after the first bite. "Whew, these are hotter than I remember." Jason laughed, sipping his soda. That's what you get for trusting a teenage cashier's snack advice. Back on the road, the city skyline of Millbrook came into view. It was busier, louder than their hometown, and the streets were tighter, filled with traffic and crosswalks. Jason's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. He didn't say it out loud, but this part made him nervous. New streets, new rules, more eyes. Grandma must have sensed it. "You're doing just fine," she said. "Just take your time." They circled a few blocks looking for a parking space. Jason spotted one, pulled in neatly and turned off the engine. He looked at his grandmother, waiting for her approval. She clapped softly. "Perfect! That was smoother than your father ever managed." Jason smiled, proud. "Told you I was a better driver." "Let's not go that far," she said, opening her door. They stepped out into the warm afternoon air. People bustled around the sidewalks, chatting, shopping, holding bags. Jason looked around, taking it all in. This felt like the kind of day he'd remember forever. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it felt right. Then he heard the sound of a police siren, close. He turned his head. A cruiser had just turned the corner behind them, and it was coming fast. Jason's stomach dropped. He watched as the cruiser slowed down, right behind their car. The lights flashed. The siren blared once, then cut off. Jason didn't move. Grandma looked over. "Do you think they want us?" Jason's voice was quiet. "I don't know." But in his chest, he felt something start to twist. Something told him that their perfect day was about to change. Jason's hands tightened around the steering wheel as the police cruiser stopped behind their parked car. The lights still flashed in the rearview mirror, bright, bold, and impossible to ignore. The siren had gone quiet, but the weight of it remained, ringing in Jason's ears like an invisible alarm. For a few seconds, neither he nor his grandmother said anything. "Maybe they're just checking something," Grandma said finally, her voice soft but unsure. Jason nodded slightly. "Maybe." But deep down, something didn't feel right. There hadn't been a traffic violation. He had parked legally. They hadn't broken any rules. So why were the police pulling up behind them? Then, the driver's side door of the cruiser opened. A tall officer stepped out. His posture was stiff, his face unreadable behind the sunglasses he wore. He placed one hand near his belt, the other resting on the door as he looked straight at Jason's car. Jason felt his chest tighten. He quickly glanced at his grandmother, who gave him a nod, as if to say, "We'll be fine." But even she looked uneasy now. "I'll talk," Jason said quietly. "I'll stay calm." "You always do," Grandma replied gently. "You've got nothing to be afraid of." The officer began walking toward them, each step slow but firm. Jason rolled down the window. Before he could say anything, the officer barked, "Driver, step out of the vehicle, now." Jason blinked. "Excuse me?" "Step out of the car. Hands where I can see them." The tone wasn't just firm, it was aggressive. Jason's heart jumped into his throat. He looked at his grandmother again. Her hand moved toward the door. The officer snapped, "Ma'am, stay inside the vehicle. This doesn't concern you." "It most certainly does," she said sharply. "This is my grandson." Jason's voice cracked as he spoke. "Officer, what's going on? Did I do something wrong?" "You match the description of a suspect involved in an incident earlier today," the officer replied. "Out of the vehicle, now." Jason's mind went blank. A suspect? What was he talking about? I don't understand," Jason said. "We just got here. We've been driving for over an hour." "Out of the vehicle!" the officer yelled again, stepping closer. Jason's fingers fumbled with his seatbelt. His breaths were short now, shallow. His ears rang. Grandma reached across and squeezed his wrist. "Do exactly what he says. I'm right here." Jason opened the door slowly. The moment he stepped out, he was told to raise his hands. He did, palms up, trembling. He could feel people on the street watching. He saw someone across the sidewalk pause, phone held up like they were filming. A couple walking past slowed down. A little girl stared, confused, pulling at her mother's hand. Jason stood still, heart pounding. Then another officer arrived. 2 cruisers now, 2 sets of flashing lights. 2 pairs of eyes trained on one teenage boy who had only planned to take his grandmother shopping. One of them spoke into his radio. Jason heard words like, "Confirmed stop," "Suspect detained," "Possible match." "Put your hands behind your back," the first officer said. Jason swallowed hard. "Wait, please. I have my learner's permit in my wallet. We weren't near anything, I swear. You can call hands behind your back." Jason turned, doing as he was told. The cold metal of the handcuffs clamped down over his wrists. It was sharp, too tight. One of the cuffs bit into his skin and he winced. He heard his grandmother get out of the car. "Officer, what are you doing?" she called out. "He's just a boy. He's never been in trouble. We just got to town." "Ma'am, please return to your vehicle," the second officer said, stepping between her and Jason. "You don't understand," she shouted, her voice trembling. "He's innocent. He hasn't done anything. He's a good boy." The first officer turned Jason slightly to face away from the street. Jason could barely speak. His throat felt like it was closing up. "Please, this is a mistake." The officer didn't respond. Behind him, Jason could hear his grandmother trying to reason with them, her voice rising, still calm, still composed, but louder now, pushing back with everything she had. "This boy teaches seniors how to use computers," she said. "He volunteers every weekend. He's got teachers and neighbors who would vouch for him in a heartbeat." None of it seemed to matter. Jason stood frozen as the officers led him toward the back seat of the cruiser. His knees felt weak. His chest was heavy. This couldn't be real. Just a few minutes ago, he was sipping soda and laughing about spicy chips. Now he was in handcuffs. As the cruiser door opened, Jason turned to see his grandmother standing by their car, hands at her chest, tears in her eyes. She looked small, but fierce, fighting to stay strong for him. He wanted to tell her not to worry, to stay calm. But the words caught in his throat. He bent slightly to enter the car, ducking his head. The door shut behind him with a solid, hollow thud, and suddenly, the world outside felt far away. He looked down at his cuffed wrists, then out the window at the city streets blurring past. He wasn't sure what he felt: fear, anger, confusion. But it all settled into one thought that echoed in his mind, over and over again. Why me? The back seat of the police car felt nothing like Jason had imagined. Hard plastic, no cushion, cold and unwelcoming. A thick glass divider separated him from the officers up front. It felt less like a car ride and more like being caged in a moving box. He sat stiff, his wrists still cuffed, resting awkwardly on his lap. Every bump in the road made the metal dig into his skin. He stared out the window as the city passed by. People walking, cars honking, kids laughing at a bus stop. Life went on like nothing had happened. But for Jason, time had slowed into a blur of disbelief. The officer driving said nothing. Neither did the one beside him. Only the crackle of the police radio filled the silence, announcing calls Jason couldn't understand. He swallowed hard, his mouth dry. His heart hadn't stopped racing since the moment they told him to get out of the car. His mind kept spinning the same question over and over. How could this be happening? He replayed the entire morning in his head, waking up excited, eating pancakes with his parents, laughing with Grandma in the car. Every moment felt like it belonged to someone else now, like it had been stolen. And what about Grandma? Jason twisted slightly to look out the back window. He caught a glimpse of her car trailing behind. She was following them. Of course she was. She wasn't the kind of woman to sit quietly while someone hurt the people she loved. That thought gave him the tiniest bit of comfort, but not enough to ease the fear sitting in his chest like a heavy stone. When they arrived at the station, Jason was let out of the car. He stepped onto the pavement, hands still cuffed behind him. He could feel eyes on him. Other officers, people coming in and out of the building. He dropped his gaze, not wanting to see their faces, not wanting them to see his. Inside, the fluorescent lights were harsh. The walls were pale and bare. Everything smelled like old paper and cleaning chemicals. "Name?" the desk officer asked without looking up. "Jason Evans," he said quietly. "Age?" 16. That made the officer look up. "He's a minor?" The arresting officer nodded. "Suspect in a robbery. Matches description." The desk officer narrowed his eyes slightly but said nothing else. Jason stood still, his feet rooted to the floor like they belonged to someone else. "Take his prints," the desk officer said. "Let's get this processed." Processed. The word sounded like it belonged in a factory, not in his life. They took his fingerprints, one finger at a time. The ink was cold and sticky. Then came the mugshot. A camera flashed. Jason blinked, stunned. It felt like the photo had captured not his face, but the exact moment his world flipped upside down. Then they took his wallet, his phone, everything from his pockets. It all went into a little plastic bag with a sticker on it. He watched it disappear into a drawer. He was led down a hallway. The air grew colder. Doors opened and shut behind him. He tried not to look at the holding cells, tried not to see the tired, angry faces inside them. They placed him in a small room. Bare walls, one bench, a camera in the corner. He sat down, the cuffs finally removed but his wrists still aching. He didn't cry. He wouldn't. But he wanted to scream. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. He didn't know. Then the door opened. It was Grandma. Her eyes were wide with worry but filled with fire. She didn't rush in or shout. She stepped in like she owned the place. Like no one, not even the law, could stop her from reaching her grandson. "Jason," she breathed, rushing to sit beside him. He tried to speak, but no words came. Just a quiet sound, caught somewhere between relief and grief. "I'm here," she said, wrapping her arms around him. "We're going to fix this." Jason sat still in her embrace, finally allowing himself to lean into her shoulder. "They think I did something bad," he said in a cracked whisper. She pulled back, looking him in the eyes. "They're wrong, and we're going to prove it." Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out, checking messages. "Your parents are on their way. The pastor's coming too. I've already called your school principal. Everyone who knows you is speaking up, Jason." Jason blinked, trying to process it. "They believe me?" "Of course they do," she said. "Because you're a good boy. They know who you are." A knock came at the door. An officer entered, not one of the ones from earlier. He looked uncertain, even nervous. "Ma'am," he said, We're looking into new information. Can you please wait outside for a moment?" She stared at him for a long beat, then slowly stood up. "Don't take long," she said firmly. Jason sat alone again. But something felt different. Now? He wasn't just a scared boy in a locked room. He was someone worth fighting for, and the people who loved him were already fighting back. While Jason sat quietly in that cold holding room somewhere across town, 2 officers were knocking on a door for an entirely different reason. They'd been called to a rundown apartment complex about a noise complaint. Nothing unusual. A neighbor had reported loud arguing, banging, and shouting in one of the upstairs units. It was the kind of call most officers brushed off as a routine disturbance, but today, it was anything but. As the officers approached the door, something crashed inside the apartment. Then silence. "Police," one of them said firmly, knocking harder. "Open the door." The silence stretched. Then suddenly the door flew open, and a young man bolted past them. The officers jumped back, stunned, then immediately gave chase. The man ran down the stairs 2 at a time, clutching something in his jacket. One of the officers caught a flash of panic in his eyes. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was just running, desperate to escape. "Stop! Police!" But he didn't stop. He darted around the corner, feet slipping on the pavement, almost crashing into a trash can. Behind him, the officers kept pace. It didn't take long before they cornered him in an alley. There was nowhere left to run. The man turned, hands up, chest heaving. "Please," he gasped. "It wasn't supposed to go like this. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." One of the officers stepped forward, calm but firm. "What are you talking about?" The man dropped to his knees, pulling a bundle from his jacket. It was money, a large wad of it, still wrapped in the bright, green band used by the convenience store just a few blocks from where Jason had been stopped. "I did it," he said, voice trembling. "I robbed the place, just this morning." Back at the station, Jason had no idea what was unfolding across town. He sat, hands in his lap, staring at the floor. His grandmother had returned to the waiting area, pacing like a mother lion. His parents had just arrived, his mother red-eyed and shaking, his father stone-faced, jaw clenched tight. Jason hadn't seen them yet. He was still locked away, being processed. The desk sergeant, now growing uneasy, glanced at his screen again. Jason's file sat open. School records, grades, letters from teachers. Not a single issue. Not one. The boy they had locked up didn't fit the picture. The officer, who had brought Jason in, paced nearby, checking his radio. When the call came in about the real suspect, apprehended, confessed, in possession of the stolen money, he stopped mid-step. "What was that?" he asked. "Repeat," said the voice on the radio. "Suspect is in custody. Confession confirmed. Evidence recovered. Robbery closed." A wave of silence passed through the room. The arresting officer swallowed hard. The sergeant slowly stood from his desk. "You sure?" "Confirmed." And just like that, everything started to unravel. In a small interview room just a few doors away, Jason sat alone, unaware that his world was about to shift again. This time, in the opposite direction. The door opened. He looked up quickly. It was the police chief now, an older man with gray at his temples, eyes heavy with experience. He looked at Jason for a long second before speaking. "Jason," he said gently, "we owe you an apology." Jason blinked. "What?" "There's been a mistake," the chief said. "A serious one." He sat across from him, removing his hat and setting it on the table. "The person responsible for the robbery has just been caught. He confessed. You were never involved. You should have never been brought in." Jason's breath caught in his throat. He stared at the man, unsure what to feel. Relief, anger, confusion. "Can I go home?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The chief nodded slowly. "Yes, and your family's waiting." A few minutes later, Jason stepped out into the hallway. His grandmother was the first to reach him. She wrapped her arms around him so tightly he almost couldn't breathe, but he didn't mind. His mother followed, then his dad. No one said anything for a moment. They just held him. Like if they let go, he might disappear again. When they finally stepped outside the station, the sunlight stung Jason's eyes. It felt like hours had passed, maybe more. But something had changed. He wasn't just a kid in handcuffs anymore. Now, people were watching. Cameras, reporters. Someone must have leaked the story, because a small crowd had gathered outside. Some held signs. Some were just standing in silence. And one by one, the questions began. What happened inside? How does it feel to be free? What would you like to say to the police? Jason didn't answer. Not yet. He wasn't ready. But as he looked out at the people, his community, his neighbors, his friends, he knew this wasn't over. Something bigger had started. Something that couldn't be undone. The house was quiet that night. too quiet. Jason lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. He hadn't changed clothes. He hadn't eaten. The warmth of home, the smells, the softness, the familiar sounds, none of it could touch him right now. His phone sat face down on the nightstand. It hadn't stopped buzzing all day. Messages, missed calls, social media tags. The video someone had taken of his arrest had gone viral. His name was everywhere now, but not for the reasons he ever wanted. He turned to his side, pulling the blanket up without really feeling it. He could still hear the voice of the officer yelling at him. "Step out of the car!" Still feel the cuffs tightening on his wrists. Still see his grandmother's face behind the windshield, afraid, helpless. His body was back home, but his mind was stuck in that cold, locked room. Downstairs, the living room buzzed like a makeshift command center. His parents sat at the dining table, speaking quietly with a civil rights attorney his grandmother had called. A local pastor was in the kitchen talking on the phone. Neighbors had dropped off food, flowers, and even handwritten letters. Someone had tied a white ribbon to the front door handle. Another left a sign in the yard. "We stand with Jason." But all of that, the support, the outrage, the noise, it didn't erase what had happened. Not from Jason's heart. Not from his memory. He rolled over, his eyes drifting toward the framed picture of him and his grandmother. He could hear her voice earlier that day. "You're a gift, Jason." It made his throat tighten. Then came a knock on the door. Soft. Familiar. "Hey, sweetheart," his grandmother said, peeking in. "Can I come in?" Jason nodded. She stepped inside and sat beside him on the edge of the bed, brushing her hand gently across his arm. "You've been quiet all evening," she said softly. Jason didn't answer. He just looked at her, his eyes rimmed red. "I didn't do anything, Grandma." "I know," she said. "And now the whole world knows too." He shook his head. "But it happened anyway. They didn't care. They saw me and just assumed that I was dangerous, that I was a criminal." His voice cracked. "I wasn't even scared at first," he whispered. "I was embarrassed. Like, maybe I did something wrong and didn't know it. But then when they cuffed me and I looked at your face, I got scared. Really scared." Tears welled up in his eyes. "I didn't know if I was going to make it home." His grandmother wrapped her arms around him, holding him as tight as she could. Her own tears ran silently down her cheeks. "You're home now," she whispered. "And you are not alone in this." He nodded, but his face was blank. The pain was there, deep under the surface. Not loud, but sharp. Lasting. That night, Jason barely slept. The sounds of sirens echoed in his dreams, cold metal against his skin, strangers yelling, and when morning came, the world outside hadn't calmed down. If anything, it had exploded. By sunrise, the street outside Jason's house was filled with reporters, local news vans, camera crews, curious neighbors, protesters with signs. Someone had printed his mugshot with a red stamp across it. Wrongfully arrested. On social media, people shared the video over and over again. The moment he was pulled from the car, the sound of his grandmother crying out behind him. The hashtag, #OneJusticeForJason, was trending nationwide. News anchors described him as the bright teen caught in a tragic mistake. Activists called it a clear example of racial profiling. The mayor released a brief statement expressing deep concern. But none of it changed what Jason had felt, or the way he flinched when he saw a police car drive by the window. His mom sat him down that morning with a warm breakfast, but he barely touched it. "You're safe now," she said, cupping his face. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." Jason looked up slowly. "But what about the next time?" Her smile faded. He wasn't trying to be dramatic. He was just being honest. He couldn't unknow what had happened. He couldn't unfeel what it had done to him. Later that day, the family agreed to hold a press conference. It was held outside the community center, surrounded by family, friends, church members, and media. The pastor stood at the mic first, then the principal of Jason's school. One by one, they spoke of who Jason really was: an honor student, a kind soul, a role model. Then Jason stepped forward. Microphones pointed. Cameras flashed. His heart pounded. But when he spoke, his voice was clear. "I was just driving my grandmother to go shopping," he said. "That's all. And I ended up in handcuffs. Not because I did anything wrong, but because someone thought I looked like someone who could." He paused. "I wish I could say I was surprised, but I've heard stories like this my whole life. I just never thought I'd become one." He looked out at the crowd. "I don't want revenge. I want change. I want to live in a place where kids like me don't grow up thinking they'll be treated like criminals before they ever get a chance to be seen." His voice cracked. "I want to feel safe. I want my grandma to feel safe. I want everyone to feel safe." Then he stepped back, and the crowd rose to their feet, not just to clap, but to promise they were with him, that they believed him, that he mattered. Weeks passed. The leaves began to turn, brushing the sidewalks in soft shades of orange and gold. Summer had slipped quietly into fall, but in Jason's life, nothing felt settled. Nothing felt the same. He walked through town with his head held high, but it wasn't always easy. Some people gave him long, curious looks. Some gave him sympathetic nods. Others looked away entirely, unsure of what to say. Jason had become more than just a student or a neighbor. He had become a symbol. At first, that weight felt too heavy to carry. He just wanted to go back to being a teenager, to eat lunch in the school courtyard without whispers behind his back, to drive down the street without checking his mirrors for flashing lights, to laugh without guilt. But life had made another choice for him, and slowly, Jason began to make peace with that. It started with a letter. A handwritten note dropped off at his door by a retired teacher in town. It read, "I've seen a lot of injustice in my time. What happened to you broke my heart. But how you've handled it, that gave me hope." That one letter turned into a dozen, then hundreds. People from across the country, students, parents, even police officers began reaching out. Some shared their own stories of being judged or mistreated. Others just wanted to say, "You matter. Keep going." Jason read every single one, and slowly the weight on his chest started to lift. One afternoon, the police chief himself called. Not a public statement, not a lawyer's message, a real phone call. He asked Jason to meet at the station, not as a suspect, but as a voice they needed to hear. Jason didn't say yes right away. He didn't trust it. But after talking with his family, he made his decision. He would go. Not for them. For himself. For every other kid like him who hadn't been believed, who didn't have a crowd of supporters, who didn't get the cameras or the headlines. He walked into that station, the same one where they'd once locked him up, and took a seat across from the same chief who had signed off on his release. "I want to help fix this," Jason said, meeting the chief's eyes. "But only if you're serious," the chief nodded. "We are." They talked for hours. That meeting became the beginning of something new, Bridge the Gap, a community-led initiative Jason helped design. Its goal was simple: bring together youth and law enforcement to talk, to listen, to work alongside each other. Not just when something went wrong, but every day. The first meeting was small. A few teens, a few officers, everyone a little tense. But Jason stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "I don't expect you to understand what it feels like to be me, but I do expect you to care." And somehow, that broke the wall. They began telling their stories. A teen shared how he'd been followed around in stores. An officer admitted he grew up being told to watch out for certain kinds of kids. It was uncomfortable, but it was honest. Over time, the program grew. They planted trees together, cleaned up parks, held open discussions at the local library. Officers came to school games, not in uniform, but in t-shirts, cheering from the Z8 sidelines. Teens started to wave instead of walk away. Trust didn't come quickly, but it started to form, brick by brick. Jason didn't do it alone. His grandmother stood beside him every step of the way, attending meetings, sharing her wisdom. His parents offered their support, protecting his peace when the media noise got too loud. And the community, once shaken, began to heal, together. Months later, on the anniversary of his arrest, the town held a gathering in the community center. The room was packed. Jason stood at the front, taller now, more confident. Not because the pain had disappeared, but because he'd found purpose inside it. He looked out over the crowd, the same officers who had once looked at him with suspicion, now sitting in chairs, nodding, listening. "I'm not here today because I want revenge," Jason said. "I'm here because I want a future where no one has to go through what I did. Where teenagers are seen as kids first, not threats. Where police officers listen before they act." He paused, steadying his voice. Change doesn't start with a headline. It starts with a conversation. The room was silent. Then came the applause. Not loud, not wild, but full of meaning. After the event, a younger boy approached Jason, probably 13, clutching a flyer for the next youth meeting. He looked up with wide eyes and said quietly, "I want to be like you." Jason smiled. "No, be better than me. Start now." As the seasons shifted again and winter crept in, Jason's life didn't go back to normal. He didn't forget what had happened. He still flinched sometimes when a siren wailed nearby. Still felt a deep ache when he passed the store near, where it all started. But he also felt something else. Pride. Not for surviving, but for rising. For choosing to speak when he could have stayed silent. For building instead of breaking. For helping turn a terrible mistake into a reason to grow. For himself, his town, and anyone who would listen. On a quiet evening, he sat again on the porch with his grandmother. The same swing, the same slow creak. She looked over at him, her eyes full of love. "You've changed the world, Jason," she said softly. He shook his head. "Not the world, Grandma. Just my corner of it." She smiled. "That's where change begins." And as the porch light flickered on behind them and the town settled into sleep, Jason looked out at the street where everything had gone wrong. And now, somehow, also where everything had started to go right.